In the Kokkuri-san divination game, players move their fingers on a board to summon a fox ghost to answer questions. Despite its old origins, it's unclear if it's just a game or a necromancy ritual, but it's advised not to play it. A little girl is playing it at a shrine when she touches a letter, and the coin suddenly shakes. A mysterious voice tells her she will be haunted for inviting him before a young man with wolf ears appears in her room, out of breath. She locks the door, not believing he is a ghost, but he breaks the window and comes in. She threatens him with salt, thinking ghosts fear it, and he seems to find it funny, but starts crying in pain when she puts salt in his eyes. He angrily tries to pinch her cheeks, but is surprised she doesn't react. She reveals she is a doll made with advanced technology and doesn't show emotions because they are a waste of time. Later, during dinner, Kokkuri is shocked to see her eating junk food and decides to cook 3 healthy meals a day for her, but she still prefers junk food. He asks about her family, and she says she has none and has been alone for a long time. Kokkuri feels sad for her, thinking no child should be alone without an adult. The next day, while he's showering, Kohina calls him again and is scared seeing him in a towel. So when he asks her to bathe with him, she calls the police. Any sane person would do that. Who's writing the script for these episodes? After the police take him away, he returns and scolds her. They later sit down, and Kokkuri asks why she called him, but instead of talking to him, she searches the internet for answers. Annoyed, he tells her he is better than the internet, and she starts asking him weird questions. However, when she asks about the weather, she finds Kokkuri checking the internet himself. She asks his age, carrying a lie detector so he can't lie, but he refuses to answer, so she confronts him about having no friends. Meanwhile, a black dog turns into a young boy and searches for his destiny. At the apartment, Kokkuri tells Kohina he was once worshipped at a shrine, which was destroyed over time. He remembers Kohina visiting his small shrine and watching over her, which she calls stalking. He enters the apartment, sees Kohina on the floor, and rushes to help, but she just says her battery died. Kokkuri thinks she is just hungry and returns the junk food to the store, thinking it won't satisfy her. Kohina accuses him of being a monster for not letting her eat her favorite food and pulls out a cigarette to attack him, determined to cut off his tail and ears, seeing which Kokkuri hurriedly escapes, and the day ends with him not returning. Later, Kohina restarts the game, hoping to see him again, but she doesn't get any response and falls back into loneliness. She tries the game again, unable to bear the loneliness, and begins to cry before he suddenly appears in front of her, hugs her, and explains he stayed away so she wouldn't miss him, which angers her. Despite this, he inwardly admits wants to stay with her until they eventually say goodbye. When Kohina comes home from school, Kokkuri notices she never smiles. Wanting her to fit into society, he decides to teach her how to live properly and develop social skills to prevent her from being bullied. However, Kohina quickly changes the subject, asking for proof that Kokkuri is real. This strange question leaves him speechless, knowing he would disappear if she stopped thinking about him. Kokkuri tries his best to make her acknowledge him and promises to teach her how to smile more. Later, he changes into his fox form, which she loves because of his paws, and starts her smile training. Next day, Kohina, looking gloomy on her way home from school, meets a costumed man who tells her to smile more. Her awkward smile scares him, and she continues to freak out strangers with it. Kokkuri, who is outside, sees her, and they decide to go home together. He reassures her that her smile will come naturally over time and can't be forced. Kohina worries that if she doesn't learn to smile, Kokkuri will dislike her and will leave her alone, so she promises him she'll try, letting go of her fears of loneliness. On a rainy day, Kohina sees a dog up for adoption and she approaches. A young boy jumps at her, saying she is his new master. At home, Kokkuri is furious she brought back a pervert, but the boy introduces himself as Inugami, a dog ghost. Despite Kokkuri locking the door, Inugami, skilled in theft, gets inside. Kokkuri warns Kohina that Inugamis pretend to be obedient, but are actually wicked, and many masters have died because of them. Kohina is skeptical, But when Inugami promises her bowls of ramen, she immediately forms a contract with him. Kokkuri questions how he knew her favorite food, so he reveals he knows everything about her because he is her stalker, which makes him even more suspicious. Inugami explains he was a dog in his previous life and was ignored by everyone except Kohina, who cared for him. This made him learn everything about her. He starts fantasizing about marrying Kohina, and Kokkuri has to stop him. Since they can't let him live with them, Kokkuri gives him a room outside, which Inugami happily accepts, knowing Kohina built it. Later, while Kohina pets Kokkuri in his fox form, Inugami, in his dog form, gets closer to her. Kokkuri, finding him squishy, can't help but pet him, but Inugami feels sad about it. Inugami asks Kohina to write her name on a paper, which turns out to be a marriage registration form, seeing which Kokkuri decides to punish him. Inugami then changes into a female version of himself, explaining he can switch genders as he doesn't remember his past life. Twitter users would come up with very imaginative uses for his power. Kohina asks if Kokkuri has this ability, which angers him. Inugami declares they must settle everything with a deadly battle, and Kokkuri agrees. She brings out guns while Kokkuri uses a frying pan as a weapon. However, Kohina starts petting a random girl, which enrages them both. Later, while drinking, Kokkuri and Inugami reveal their inferiority complex towards cats and end up making up with each other. When Kokkuri offers him a handshake, Inugami tells him that he never intended to make up with him, as Kokkuri continues to come between him and Kohina. Since Inugami and Kokkuri now have responsibilities, Kokkuri decides to cook for Kohina to make sure she has a healthy diet to grow well. Inugami is assigned the role of a guard dog and fetches the morning newspaper. When Kokkuri calls for Inugami and gets no response, he searches his room and is shocked to find it filled with pictures and dolls of Kohina. Kohina later tells Kokkuri that Inugami disobeys her commands and says they should correct his behavior. She found a book about training dogs at a bookstore and believes it will help control Inugami. Kokkuri is suspicious, thinking it won't work on Inugami, but she remains positive. Eavesdropping on their conversation, Inugami finds the idea of being controlled by a book weird but exciting. Imagining Kohina whipping him, my man needs to be put on a list. The next day, while Kokkuri goes to the supermarket, Kohina tells Inugami they will start going for daily walks, which he eagerly agrees to, wagging his tail. They enjoy their walks, but Kohina soon gets tired of this activity and hands Inugami's leash to Kokkuri, assigning him the daily walk duty. That night, Kokkuri wonders what prevents Kohina from accepting herself as a person instead of a doll. To help, he visits her room but finds her buried among Inugami's clones and punishes them. Alone at home, Kohina decides to eat instant ramen, her favorite meal, since Kokkuri isn't there to stop her. However, her plans are stopped when Kokkuri returns and prevents her from eating it. Kokkuri thinks of how he can make her diet better, and Inugami suggests overwhelming her with noodle bowls until she is traumatized. Kokkuri dismisses this idea before Inugami asks him why he stays with Kohina, to which he reveals that he has nothing else to do and decides to stay with her. After Inugami leaves, Kokkuri remembers a promise he made to Kohina long ago, unsure of whether or not she still remembers. He asks her about her past, but she can't even remember what she ate the previous day. One night, Kokkuri goes outside and discovers Inugami burying something. Curious, he digs it up and finds a magazine about looking better in front of a girl. Kohina later asks Inugami to be kind to Kokkuri, but he tells her that he doesn't understand kindness, so she decides to try teaching him, but Kokkuri interrupts them, scolding Inugami for using underhanded tactics to win Kohina's heart. Later, Kohina plays the Kokkuri-san game with Inugami and accidentally summons a random drunk man. The drunken man turns out to be Shigaraki, a tanuki ghost and Kokkuri's former roommate. Kokkuri remembers Shigaraki as someone who was careless about cleanliness and often tricked him into cooking meals. Shigaraki is surprised to run into the hereditary witch family. When Kohina hears about this for the first time, she asks what it is. Kokkuri explains that it's a family that works with animal ghosts, passing the ability down from mother to child. Shigaraki decides to live with them because he has nowhere else to go, but Kokkuri doesn't agree to it, saying he can never trust a tenuki. Shigaraki betrays Kohina by offering her money, which turns out to be fake, and asks Kokkuri for a loan the next day, but Kokkuri refuses since Shigaraki hasn't repaid a previous one. Despite this, he ends up giving him old, worthless coins, making Kokkuri cry. When Shigaraki decides to explore the town, Kohina and Kokkuri follow him and see him entering an orphanage. There, he gives candy to the children. Kokkuri, not believing Shigaraki could be so kind, talks to the woman in charge, who explains that Shigaraki often donates to them and is the reason the orphanage is still open. After he exits, they approach him, and he reveals that the children belong to the family he once tormented. Later, Kohina quickly leaves for school and Kokkuri tells Shigaraki he worries she will be bullied because of her nature. From a tree, Kokkuri sees her chasing other girls, causing him to rethink his worries. He then meets her, and she admits she is interested in an alien boy named Yamamoto, but Kokkuri tells her that's an extraterrestrial being, and despairingly admits he wasn't expecting an alien to appear. Kohina insists that Yamamoto is a normal Earthling, and everyone likes him because he's really nice, telling him about how he reached out to her when she tripped the other day and left without helping her up. Kokkuri says his actions are too alien, but Kohina says he fits into the class too well to be an alien, telling him about how he agreed to go home with the boy from their class, and they flew in the sky. Yamamoto's sure taking liberty with the movie references here. When Kokkuri and Inubami see Yamamoto, they are shocked, feeling tricked into believing he is an Earthling. And when some people pick Yamamoto up after class, Kohina tells Kokkuri that his parents sometimes come for him, but Kokkuri tells her that they are members of a group that dissects extraterrestrial beings.